So if you're betting on football or you're doing some Betfair trading, this time of the year presents some absolutely first-class quality opportunities to profit at relatively low risk. It's fairly unique to this time of year, although they do occur throughout the year, but it's worth exploring in this video. I've been successfully betting, trading and investing for over 30 years. I have a lot of knowledge up here. I would like to get it out there. So if you like this video, then like this video. But also please share, subscribe, do all of those wonderful things to tell me that I'm on the right track. Visit the Academy as well if you want some structure behind all of your learning. Pop into our forum where you can talk to like-minded people. And why not download a free trial of BetAngel if you want to use the same software that I use every day. Thank you for listening to this unashamed plug. Now let's get on with the video. So as I record this video, we are in the early parts of January, and the new year brings new opportunities to you if you're betting on football or if you have some sort of football trading strategy that you're going to use on Betfair. These strategies do occur throughout the year, but they're particularly pronounced in early January. Why? It's because we are looking at the third round of the FA Cup. And when we move into the third round of the FA Cup, that's when all of the Premier League teams join into the melee, and the whole thing becomes a bit of a mishmash between lower league teams and much higher quality teams. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the FA Cup has this romance attached to it, but that romance is fading and fairly significantly, because the romance factor comes in about the non-league team playing a huge Premier League team. You can look up and down the list of fixtures that we have on this particular round of the FA Cup, and you can see a variety of mismatches in there between teams that, like Marine, for example, against Spurs this year, where there's an absolutely massive gulf in class between the two teams. So the fact that Marine can host, one of the top teams within the Premier League is obviously a massive boost to them. However, it's not quite the same the other way around. The FA Cup, because of its low prize money, has become a bit of a burden to Premier League teams. They get paid millions for the rights to have their matches televised and other things, and therefore the FA Cup has become a bit of a distraction for them. If you look at the prize money that's available within the FA Cup, it's dramatically small in comparison to the sort of prize money that you see on the Premier League. Most of this information is publicly available. I will bring up a list of prize money on this year's FA Cup, and I will also go out there and have a look for the amount of prize money that was distributed to Premier League teams. And you can see that there is an absolutely massive gulf between the two. So as a consequence, this means that there's less emphasis for Premier League teams on competitions like the FA Cup. They no longer consider it to be a prestigious tournament. They would like to win it, but they're not going to risk any injuries to their team around a period that's going to be very congested. This is particularly so for teams that are going further in other cup competitions and in European football. So as a consequence, they tend to put less emphasis on the FA Cup than perhaps some of the other teams. Now, this presents a number of opportunities for you, because probably the first opportunity, and it's predominantly a betting opportunity, is to look for shocks in the FA Cup. And we should sort of put quotes around shocks, because typically they're not dramatic shocks. But generally, if you have a team in one of the higher divisions within the Premier League, within the Football League structure, I should say, then you tend to find teams that are low on confidence, perhaps have a few injuries, and who are fighting for relegation. They tend to perform slightly worse than you would typically expect. And if confidence is low in sport at any level is very often about confidence, and that can very often produce a shock. So therefore, from a pure betting perspective, sometimes you tend to find there could be a little bit of value in there going against teams that are low on confidence, who are playing teams that are maybe at lower divisions or perhaps even non-league teams. This is typically where a lot of shocks come from. Now, you will find some of this is priced into the market, but not always. And typically every year, especially in the third round, you'll find some fairly unmotivated footballers trudging around a non-league or a lower league team on a pitch that they're not particularly used to, who don't have the same fight as that lower league team. And as a consequence, it's quite likely that you may be able to pick off a few shocks from there. Now, when you're looking at much higher quality teams and teams that are competing for honours and are perhaps in Europe, then typically what you will find is that they are still motivated to do well and perhaps potentially pick up an FA Cup or some other domestic honours. But they don't want to risk all of that basically for perhaps getting promoted, perhaps qualifying for Europe, perhaps winning the league, or progressing to the next round of a European competition. So as a consequence, they tend to carefully manage their commitments to the FA Cup. And this is where the other opportunity sort of springs to life here, in that they will tend to alter their teams significantly in order to avoid injuries and to spread out their squad across their fixture schedule. This is very dominant when you have teams that are playing in Europe, but it would also occur elsewhere. And as a consequence, one of the best strategies that you can deploy at this time of year, this is peak season for trading team news. When those team sheets are announced, or perhaps in the run-up to the actual match itself, when they start to hint at players who are going to be in or out of those particular teams, this is when it can be an absolutely brilliant strategy, because you can potentially see some significant moves based around the teams that are going to be announced. This is peak season for trading team news. Now, this can occur for a number of reasons, and I have highlighted in a video dedicated to team news some very interesting and specific causes for significant moves within the market that are all based around situations that have occurred because of team news. So what I suggest, and I will put the link in the description below and or link to the video somehow and bring up an image of it on here of me chatting away. Watch that video, because that will contain a lot of the information that you require. And it also gives you very clearly and specifically some examples around when that has occurred and what happened within those particular markets. Now, at the time of recording this video in 2021, we also have a global pandemic taking place, and that is throwing even more uncertainty into the mix, because not only do teams want to protect their first team players, but it's possible, because of positive infection diagnosis, that some of those players may not be able to actually take part. And we've already seen a significant move in the FA Cup third round this week when we look at the Aston Villa versus Liverpool match. Aston Villa players have, there's been an outbreak of COVID-19 within their camp. So they've decided, in order to protect their squad, that they're just basically not going to play in the FA Cup third round, and they're going to put out a bunch of youngsters. And have a look at what happened to the price of Liverpool as this story started to unfold. Very unfortunate circumstance, but the fact is the market exists there, and the market will adjust for all of this news as it begins to unfold. And we have also seen this in the Chorley versus Derby match. Derby are basically not going to field their first team players, and the market has been all over the place. This is pretty much, I was going to say the only time. You will see it because of other circumstances, but this is the peak time for the sort of team news, and it's been dramatically exacerbated because of the pandemic as well. So yeah, putting the pandemic aside, this occurs naturally anyhow. It's just amplified this particular effect over the course of this particular year. So you tend to find that this occurs regularly anyhow, but you're likely to see significant moves occurring in this round and subsequent rounds as we get through the worst of this particular situation. So yeah, trading team news is probably the top strategy that you can use here, because there are going to be absolutely massive opportunities to do that in round 3 and probably onwards from here. It's only in the later rounds do proper teams start getting put out for this competition. So we've looked at a couple of things here. We've looked at looking for the shock defeat. We've also figured out that there's a great opportunity to be able to trade before the off based around team news. But there is a in-play Betfair trading strategy that you may want to explore as well, or a derivative thereof. And that is driven by the nature of a knockout competition. Now, typically what you tend to see in a cup competition is in those dying moments before the match is ending, depending upon the scoreline, there's actually a huge incentive to score. So if it's 0-0 or it's a draw, then if you can just grab that goal in the dying moments in the last 5, 10, 15 minutes, then you've got a good chance of hanging on and going through to the next round. So it's quite likely that a striker who's just outside the box, who can see a couple of feet of goal, will give it a go, because then he can cartwheel away in glory, knowing that he has sealed qualification to the next round. You also see this on European football in two-legged competitions where there's an incentive to score on a away goal. But predominantly it's knockout cup competitions where you tend to see a very, very strong incentive to score. Now, it's slightly different this year in terms of there will be no FA Cup replays. So that will alter it slightly, but again, you don't really want to go into extra time and wear out all of your players. So there's still that incentive to score, but maybe it will be slightly more subdued this year. But typically what I will be doing is later on in close matches, I'll be looking for that incentive to score, seeing matches where that appears to be a potentially dominant characteristic where there is that incentive. And I'll be looking to deploy betting and Betfair trading strategies that will benefit if there is a particularly late goal. So yeah, there's another angle for you there on these FA Cup matches. So to summarise here, there are three things that I'll be predominantly doing and looking to take advantage of on the FA Cup matches this weekend. The first one is I'll be looking up and down that entire list for where the potential for a shock could occur. And that will be typically, you can use it as a betting strategy, but of course, if you're familiar with Betfair trading, then you'll have the opportunity to trade out. And as I have stated, or you may have noticed it sometimes, I have done this in the past, outsiders tend to score more frequently first than you would expect. So have a look at the entire fixture list and try and pinpoint where you think some of those shocks could occur. But when you're actually looking at that list, you'll also be able to understand where potential for team changes could occur, because this is probably the lowest risk strategy that you can do with a potentially massive payoff at this particular time of year. So identifying matches where you're expecting to see team changes, you'll see a significant move in odds, and that means that you could profit significantly on a match before the ball is even kicked, with taking very little risk overall. So this is my preferred strategy at this time of year. But also when the match goes in play, look for a late goal, because the incentive to score in cup competitions is typically very high, and therefore you will be able to profit from that whether you're looking at a betting or trading strategy. The incentive to score and go for a goal late on within the match is very high within a cup competition, and that can produce a decent opportunity to profit. So I hope that's been useful for you, and I hope that you'll be able to benefit from some of those on the FA Cup this weekend and for the rest of the tournament.